We're so glad to have you join us. We're going to be recording today's webinar so that we can put it on our websites afterwards so you can revisit the content or for folks that weren't able to attend in person. So we're going to just give it, we have over 100 RSVPs, 180 something. So we're just going to give it a minute or so that we can get everybody into the Zoom room. So great to see familiar faces joining us today, and as well as a lot of new names and faces. And that's some of the power of doing these regional events together is we get to come together from all over the Bay in this virtual space and celebrate Affordable Housing Month. So welcome, happy Affordable Housing Month, and we will get started in just a minute or so. We have such a great um, have such a great RSVP rate that we want to make sure we get everybody into the room before we kick off in earnest. So, welcome. Glad to see so many familiar and new faces joining us on this seventh day of Affordable Housing Month. We will get started in just a minute or so as we let everybody into the Zoom space, but hopefully everyone's having a great first official week of Affordable Housing Month. I know there's been a lot of great events. EBHO had our kickoff yesterday. I know SV at Home had their kickoff party on Monday. So lots of celebrating and joy. And now we're gonna do a little, wonky policy talk. And so that's the beauty of Affordable Housing Month. We celebrate together, we learn together, we come together in virtual and physical spaces all throughout the month. So, welcome, welcome. We'll just give it another minute or so. As I mentioned, we had about 180 some RSVPs, so just want to get folks into the Zoom space and then we'll get started in earnest. But I really want to thank everybody for making time today. We know that everyone's very busy. We know there's a lot of events, a lot of amazing events to choose from during Affordable Housing Month. So we appreciate you joining us in real time today. And as I mentioned, we are recording this webinar so that we can post it to our websites and you can revisit the content in the future, or for folks that weren't able to make it in real time, can watch the content. So we'll get started in just about 30 seconds. Just want to give a few more people some time to get into the Zoom space. We've got plenty of time. It's a lot of content, but we're on schedule. We're going to give ourselves a few minutes to let everybody in. So we will just continue to do that as we get started. Wow, such a great turnout. This is wonderful. Really happy to see so many people joining us on today, our seventh day of Affordable Housing Month. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. And we'll continue to admit people into the Zoom room as folks might be joining in the next few minutes. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Lindsay Haddix, and I am the Executive Director at East Bay Housing Organizations. As I mentioned earlier, we are recording this webinar so that we can post it to our websites and folks can revisit the content, or folks that weren't able to make it can join and watch it on their own time. So I am so excited for today's presentation about the governor's reorganization plan. You know, we love acronyms, so we can't just stop there. We have to call it the GPR, and the creation of the brand new, shiny California Housing and Homelessness Agency, CHHA. I have heard many people call it CHA. We'll hear from the experts themselves if that is a name that's sticking, but it's very excited. And I am so thrilled to be joined today by Geeta Rao, the Senior Director at Enterprise Community Partners, NorCal office, Sarah Karlinky, who is the Director of Research and Policy at the Terner Center housed within UC Berkeley, and Christina Moon, the Deputy Secretary of Housing Finance at BCSH, also known as the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. I also just want to note how great it is that this panel is all amazing women, and I want to welcome them all into the space. But before we do that, we're going to just give a quick note about Affordable Housing Month and today's event. So, as you can see, it takes a village, and EBHO did not put this event on alone. We did it in deep partnership with our peer organizations all around the Bay Area who are also putting on Affordable Housing Month events all month long. So you can see from the logos there that we are doing this event in partnership with SV at Home, based in Santa Clara County, Housing Santa Cruz County, which that's right, they're in Santa Cruz, Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County, Generation Housing up in the North Bay, they're in Sonoma and just starting to creep into Napa a little bit. CHHA, also known as the Council of Community Housing Organizations, based in San Francisco. Marin Home, our newest partner in Marin. And then, of course, as we mentioned, the Terner Center at UC Berkeley Enterprise, and then the BCSH itself. So we are excited. EBHO is excited to be hosting Affordable Housing Month events all month long. You can find our calendar on our website, which is ebho.org. And we are doing over 30 events ourselves. But not to be outdone, some of our partners are doing even more events than us. So there's lots of great events to choose from, and some in virtual spaces, some in physical spaces. And we hope that you will come to as many as you can and spread the word. Most of the events are free and open to the public, so you can come and bring your friends, and it's pretty low stakes because it's free. And so you can go to affordablehousingmonth.org and see all of the events that all of the Bay Area partners are putting on together. And this also really is a full circle moment, because some of you might know the lore behind Affordable Housing Month. It started out as Affordable Housing Week, and because of the brilliant idea of one of our panelists today, Geeta Rao, when she was at NPH, it was too hard to pack so many amazing events into just 1 week. So we expanded it to a full month. So thank you, Geeta, for that insight. And as you can see here on the screen, this is just an example of EBHO's events all month long. Again, lots in person, a few that are virtual or hybrid, and all of these events for EBHO's events for the rest of the month are free and open to the public. And again, you can go to affordablehousingmonth.org and see all of the events for the entire month that are being presented by all of the county partners. Okay, just a little bit about EBHO. We mobilize power and wisdom of our members to produce, preserve, and protect affordable housing opportunities for low-income communities in the East Bay. And we believe that housing is a human right, that housing justice intersects with racial, economic, disability, and social justice. And you can learn more about our work and how to become a member at ebho.org/membership. EBHO's been doing this work for a long time. We've been around since 1984. Might be older than some of you on this call, or some of you might remember or even helped form EBHO. So if you were around back in those days, thank you. Marin Home is our newest partner. They have just formed, I think, within the last year. But the thing that we all have in common, from Marin to Contra Costa County to Santa Clara and all of the counties, in between in the Bay Area, is that we all want to see more safe, stable, decent, affordable housing across the Bay, where folks feel a sense of belonging, a sense of stability, and have access to opportunity. And that's why I'm honored to get to present this event today with our co-conveners and hosts all around the Bay. All right, let's get to the main event. That's why you're all here. So again, really excited to welcome Geeta Rao from Enterprise Community Partners, Sarah Karlinky from the Terner Center, Christina Moon from BCSH, to talk a little bit about the new California Housing and Homelessness Agency. If you're just joining us, we are recording this event so that we can post it to our website so you can revisit the event and the slides. Or for folks that aren't able to attend in real time, they can come back and watch it in their own time at their leisure. So without further ado, I'd love to turn things over to our esteemed panelists. Geeta, Sarah, and Christina, please take it away.
Great. Thank you. What a wonderful way to start Affordable Housing Month. And all of this is actually my favorite month. It's not because I came up with the idea to have a month. It's because all the events warm my heart, from panels to going to groundbreakings. I'll be heading to Silicon Valley for the women's brunch. There's just a lot of things about this month that bring our community together. And congratulations, Lindsay, and to the Abajo team for an awesome kickoff yesterday. So as Lindsay mentioned, my name is Geeta Rao, and I'm a senior director at Enterprise Community Partners. And so can we go to the next slide? Just a little bit about Enterprise. We work on increasing housing supply, advancing racial equity, and building resilience. And so Enterprise and the Terner team, we've been working together for over a year now to support the governor's reorganization plan, and that was enacted in the summer of last year. And also, Sarah, Christina, and I have been, I think, on this is our maybe our seventh panel together over the past year. So some of you may have seen this information before, and it might be new to some folks. But we are really excited because we do think this might be our last panel, since we're really on the brink of seeing this plan come to fruition. So let's go to the next slide. So Christina will go much farther in depth about what the reorganization is, but let me just give the basic parameters. So the reorganization, it divides the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency into two agencies. And so right now, as you can see, it's a behemoth organization, horse racing, cemeteries, cannabis, fair housing, affordable housing, development finance, you name it. It runs the gamut. And what the reorganization does is it splits business and consumer services into one agency and housing into the other. And so the first time in the history of the state, there'll be a standalone agency focused exclusively on affordable housing and homelessness. And so what this does is it provides this huge opportunity to create the right systems and processes that get us to our shared goal of ending homelessness and housing security for all Californians. But right now, what's going on, let's go to the next slide, is we have a housing and development finance system that's pretty fractured, and it makes that goal challenging. And so for users of the system, and I think there's many of you here on the webinar, particularly affordable housing developers, it's a pretty maddening process to build affordable housing and supportive housing. It can take up to 4 to 8 typical sources per development. And each source has a separate application process, scoring and evaluation, decision-making, compliance, reporting, and it's very costly. And there's a lot of time delays, and it's pretty inefficient. And the fragmentation of this this fragmented structure, this is exactly what the reorg is trying to fix. So if we go to the next slide, this is a capital stack. So this shows the layering of funding. Where was I? I was giving this webinar and somebody yelled out, "I've done 13 sources." And so, but you can see that you need subsidies, you need tax credits and bonds, a mortgage from a bank, and operating subsidies. And it's a very expensive, because of this fragmented system. And I'm actually not going to share. You can see CHP's cost estimates, but also Sarah will share Terner's cost estimates as well. So let's go to the next slide. So here's a case study, and what I appreciate about this case study is it really exemplifies what happens. So this is Colibri Commons in East Palo Alto. The developers are EPA Can Do in Midpen. And the table here shows all of the sources of funding. And it took 4 years to secure public funding from 8 sources. And in that time, the development cost increased by 28%. So it went from $765,000 per unit to $978,000 per unit. Not all of these costs are because of fragmentation, but it's a piece of it. Okay, so my last slide is, so next slide. So this is my last slide. So last year, Sarah and I and folks from the Terner Center and Enterprise, we conducted focus groups across the state with about 60-ish stakeholders. And we heard, firsthand what's challenging, which is in the blue boxes. So in terms of the awards, it takes 6 train stops to get the money. In terms of closing, there's a lot of legal pain points, and a lot of times there isn't a sense of there's no clear decision-making authority. And then compliance. There is a lot of forms for compliance. It's the same information, different form every year. So the newly created Housing Development and Finance Agency, it's empowered to look at all the funding relevant to housing and homelessness in the state government programs, and it's really empowered to create these better systems. So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, and she's going to talk about her research at the Terner Center and how that research has really shaped what the state is going to do, and it's in the reorganization.
Great. Thank you, Geeta. I really appreciate it. If you could go to the next slide, please. And the next slide after that. Great. So I'm Sarah Karlinky. I work at the Terner Center for Housing Innovation. For those of you who are familiar with the Terner Center, we are a housing research center that is part of UC Berkeley. We work on formulating bold strategies to house families from all walks of life in vibrant, sustainable, and affordable homes and communities. Next slide, please. So I'm going to be talking a bit about Terner Center's research on the topic of housing fragmentation, and then also how other states are set up to deliver affordable housing and what we might learn from those states and how, frankly, those learnings are being incorporated in real time into the plan for the new, I'm going to call it the new CHHA agency, as well as its Housing Development and Finance Committee and all the great work that Christina is doing. But just briefly, we have done a whole series of reports kind of looking at tax credit properties, trying to understand the cost of fragmentation, and then what that means for the ability of the state to actually produce more housing. Next slide, please. As some of you may be familiar, California basically has a very, very what we call kind of fragmented affordable housing delivery system, where we have multiple different agencies and departments that are responsible for financing affordable housing. Some of those live currently under the governor, so the California Department of Housing and Community Development and the California Housing Finance Agency, both of those are under the purview of the governor. And then separate constitutional officers, the treasurer, and under the treasurer are tax credits and tax exempt bond debt. And I would say this new agency, it's really been very exciting because these two sides of the house are really talking together and coordinating in a way that is new, which is wonderful. And Christina will share more about that. But historically, there has been less coordination. And so, as Geeta mentioned about Calibri Commons, you basically have projects that are going to various different agencies and entities trying to layer on this, either some people call it a layer cake or a lasagna of affordable housing, and that creates problems. So next slide, please. So we studied actually what the cost and time of this additional complexity adds to projects. And so what we found was that for each additional public funding source, so each additional layer of the layer cake or the lasagna, it adds roughly 4 months to the timeline for projects. And then it adds roughly $20,000 per source per unit. So it ends up being very expensive to have the type of system that we have. And of course, we want every single dollar of affordable housing to be used as quickly and as most efficiently as possible. Next slide, please. So we took a look at what we could learn from some other states, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the findings from some of these other states. Next slide, please. The first thing we did, however, was do a national comparison to see how most states arrange their affordable housing finance system. And basically, what we found is most states are much more consolidated than California is. Roughly 80% of the states have most of their affordable housing finance systems administered by their housing finance agency. And so basically, the housing finance agency is the main housing agency, and then they coordinate and arrange the housing uh, forces. And so there's just much less complexity. Only California and Massachusetts do not have a housing finance agency that administers their tax credit program. So that makes us unique amongst states. Next slide. We also found that on average, states have 2.5 entities administering 5 key affordable housing programs. I'm not going to go through all that here, but you can go to our website and take a look. And so basically, California, again, is just a bit of an outlier in having 3 entities administer these 5 key affordable housing programs. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the various case studies that we have, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with Maryland. Maryland is somewhat unique in the sense that basically all of its housing functions are consolidated into a cabinet level department called the Department of Housing and Community Development. And then their housing finance agency sits underneath that department. For the agency itself, the secretary is appointed by the governor. It is, that secretary is not accountable to a board. One interviewee that we talked to noted that this approach was important because it created a culture of accountability, and it made the state legislature more likely to appropriate funds. And so this person said, you have a state agency who can create funds, request appropriations from the state, and they're already leveraging money, and they're getting from the federal government. And then the secretary is beholden to the governor. So if the governor says, this is my priority and I want you to all work together, that's a pretty easy thing for him to do. And so basically it creates a culture of coherence and accountability. Next slide. The next slide I'm going to talk about, the next state is Massachusetts. And I think Massachusetts actually has many learnings for California, again, because of its unique structure. So Massachusetts really recently underwent a reorganization effort to clarify responsibilities over its core housing functions. And it created cabinet level housing and community development agency. And that agency administers various federal subsidy programs, including home and CDBG, 9% tax credits, and other state funding programs. However, there are other agencies in Massachusetts that administer, some of them administer some 4% tax credits. The Housing Finance Agency, as I mentioned earlier, sits outside of this cabinet level agency, but they have a high level of coordination. And noticeably, I think one thing that's important is they actually have established a one-stop shop for affordable housing, which was established in the 1990s, which creates a consolidated approach for applying for gap financing through the state's one-stop shop application process. And they have a system called MassDocs, which provides a single set of loan documents, mortgage, affordable housing restriction documents, et cetera. And basically, there are a set of lawyers, they're actually outside contracted lawyers by the state who use this centralized system. If you're a developer working with the state of Massachusetts, you're assigned that lawyer, and then the lawyer carries through the entirety of the closing process. Next slide. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about Minnesota. Minnesota is well known for its one-stop shop solution, which seeks to simplify the funding processes by aligning applications and coordinating funding sources, makes it much easier for developers to apply for funding. So basically, they have a single RFP process. And so the developers don't actually apply for kind of separate funding. Basically, they come in, they present their project, and then the state does kind of like a mix and match system of putting together the funding sources. Next slide. New York is also really an important model. They actually went ahead and did a reorg in 2010 to reduce administrative efficiencies. And basically, what they did is they took three different legally separate entities and put them under what they call a commissioner. And then the commissioner is basically the head of these three different agencies, all of which are embedded culturally together, even though they are legally distinct. Next slide. Think in the interest of time, I'm going to skip North Carolina, next slide, and go straight to Oregon. Oregon is also really interesting. They recently went through a streamlined process to create like a one-stop shop under their ORCA system, where basically developers come in and apply. And if they meet the criteria, they're then awarded funding. One of the interesting things that we actually recently learned about Oregon is that you're sort of guaranteed funding, you know it's coming, but because they have more, they're oversubscribed, there's often a queue. So that is actually a downside of their system. Next slide. So I'm going to just run through the last piece of this pretty quickly. I think it's pretty clear to everyone that fragmentation results in duplicative, conflicting funding requirements, and that's tricky. And stakeholders that we talked to said there's just too much uncertainty in the development process, and seeking consolidation can help address that. Next slide. They also talked a lot about a one-stop shop solution with a single application process as being essential, and that's something that the state's working on, and I know Christina will speak to that. Next slide. And they also talked about how just strong leadership is absolutely essential in ensuring interagency collaboration. They also noted that you can have integration and coordination without consolidation, but that consolidation basically creates the structure around with which coordination can occur and can be incredibly beneficial. And they also noted that a single agency approach could potentially be risky if the leadership is weak or the person doesn't care about affordable housing. That can obviously be one downside. Next slide. And so basically successful states, they have really high capacity, well-trained staff who work very well together. And while achieving this in a fragmented system might not be impossible, it's easier to do if there is some type of consolidation. So I'm going to now turn it over to Christina.
Thanks, Sarah. And thanks, Geeta. Appreciate EBHO hosting us for this event. I'm going to get into what we've been working on at the state. And I just want to start by saying thanks to all of you for really coming along with us on this journey and sharing your knowledge along the way. You all are the ones really working in the field and experiencing some of the pain points of this kind of complex structure that exists. And so it's been really helpful to hear from everyone and capture these learnings that folks have been sharing with us to really shift our attention to being better partners and bringing that customer orientation to our services that Sarah just mentioned. So it's been a really long journey. It started way before I joined the state with many of you. And just want to acknowledge that, you know, as Sarah just showed us, a lot of states don't do it how we do it. You know, we're pretty special. And the very structure we have can create some unintended hurdles to the expediency that we need to respond to the housing crisis. So really trying to integrate these learnings into our work ahead. Next slide. And Geeta kind of kicked us off a bit on this, but just to dive a little deeper, you know, we have currently a pretty big agency that covers things like hairdressers and beauticians and horse racing and housing and homelessness. So now with this cabinet level secretary leading CHHA, I'll say CHHA, trying to make it stick, the California Housing and Homelessness Agency, we're really going to have dedicated focus on housing and homelessness and civil rights and how those come together. So CHHA will have 5 departments that really reinforce each other across the continuum of housing. And you will recognize many of these departments. Hopefully, you probably interact a lot with HCD. Maybe you've interacted with civil rights and CalHFA and see the guidance from CalICH on homelessness policy and practice. And in the middle, you have the new Housing Development and Finance Committee, which is sort of the new thing coming out of the reorg under the new agency. And the Housing Development and Finance Committee is really going to pull out the developer-facing housing finance programs for affordable multifamily housing. And we're going to flow them through HDFC. So those may have come from other departments, but really if you're a developer looking for multifamily programs, it's really HDFC that you're going to be interacting with. Next slide. So what that means for kind of right sizing across the departments, by pulling out the multifamily affordable housing finance through HDFC, we can really focus on the one-stop shop. You'll be able to come to HDFC, ask for the funding, and when you get a response, you'll know if you have complete funding or not, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. We'll also have through HDFC a public-facing body that will really bring more transparency and accountability through public meetings. HCD, where some of those programs are currently, and those programs will transition to HDFC. But there's a lot that HCD does, right? They have a really big portfolio of work that's grown in tremendous ways. They serve a lot of functions. And so when we pull out the loan programs into HDFC, HCD can really focus on their government to government support, tribal housing programs, policy, planning, accountability, right? All the housing element work they do, codes and standards. So there is sort of a rebalancing happening across the departments. And then CalHFA will largely remain the same, except that MIP, the subsidy component of MIP will fold into HDFC, while the lending will remain at CalHFA. And CalICH will largely remain the same, except, sort of insider government stuff. But right now they're nested within BCSH and they're going to become their own department essentially. And then civil rights will continue their work largely unchanged, but really exploring ways to continue deepening the connection to our housing and homelessness work. Next slide. So we are kind of going towards the end of the orange line here on our timeline. We started back last summer when our proposal for the reorg went into effect. We've been developing all the administrative frameworks needed to stand up to agencies and a new department, and the staffing and the streamlining that happens. We've been engaging a lot with our partners, with many of you, and that will continue. And pretty soon we'll have HDFC becoming operational, and you'll have that public meeting avenue to engage more directly with HDFC and with CHHA. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Stay here for a second, go back. We're all marching towards July 1st, which is when the reorg officially goes into effect. And so as of July 1st, BCSH as an agency will dissolve and will become the 2 agencies of CHHA or CHHA and BCSA. We'll have HDFC be fully operational. We'll be able to start moving staff into HDFC to be a real department. And then, some of the initial program transfers will already be underway as well. Thank you. Next slide. And so HDFC, as I mentioned, is really leading the centralization of subsidy into a one-stop shop. It's not just like a single application. It's really going deep into guidelines. It's looking at universality within our guidelines and then building back up from there. So you're not looking for like 7 programs and trying to shop, what sources could work with what. We're really trying to create a consolidated approach, and, streamlining how it gets administered. So hopefully that translates to more ease into the system and more transparency for our customers, as well as in how decisions are made. So the goals are to really consolidate everything into unified scoring, universal guidelines, have a single application, review an award process, and streamline post-award process. And part of that will also be developing a portal to reflect all of this. And the end goal is really to have fully funded projects so that, you don't have to come back for more subsidy because you're capped on, what each program will allow. Through putting it all together, we're able to have a comprehensive award process. So we can say, okay, for these projects, highest scoring projects, that probably, hopefully will have more visibility into what will be successful. You'll be able to have access to more funding and to have more legibility in what will win. And just noting that programs that will transition, this is not overnight. We've been working on this and we'll continue working on transitioning programs, but really don't want to get in the way of kind of existing work and existing implementations. So while there is a big shift happening that I'll talk about soon in the future NOFAs, anything that's active right now, basic round 10, and MHP gap NOFA that's about to be coming out, those will continue to be implemented so we don't get in the way of getting that money out. Next slide. Okay, so the budget proposal that we have currently, we issued that back in January, February, and we're really trying to realize the one-stop shop through HDFC. And so, if you kind of look at what was allowed to move and transition to HDFC, it was the Super NOFA, it was the MIP subsidy, but it really, it didn't acknowledge how tax credits and bonds would work with that, and didn't acknowledge kind of the ASIC structure. And so the budget proposal is trying to bring it all together. And it starts by having a set aside or an allocation for HDFC out of the state's bond cap. So just to kind of go through this graphic, we're proposing that out of the total state bond cap, 90% would go to the QRRP for affordable housing. Out of that 90%, which currently there's no floor, so this is a shift for CHHA, but it is about what has been allocated for QRRP over the past several years. Out of the 90%, half would go to HDFC to pair with its subsidy awards. And the subsidy would also include the Super NOFA, a housing component of ASIC, which I'll talk more about in a second, and the MIP program, and kind of coordinated with any other multifamily funding that was available. That way you would know when you got your subsidy, you would also have certainty around your tax credit and bond award. And then there would just be a ministerial process to get you that allocation with TCAC and CHHA. The other half would stay with TCAC and CHHA to administer for projects that are not seeking HDFC subsidy. Just a note, sometimes folks have been asking, how did we get to this structure, especially the sort of percentages of set-asides. We did do a deep dive looking back on data. So we looked at the past 5+ years and saw what had been requested, which is for HCD and CalHFA, we requested 58 to 101% of available cap every year, but we were awarded 29 to 52%. So, just kind of recognizing the range that we're working within. That doesn't include the $3 billion in accelerator type funding that the state put in to really take pressure off the bond system. I think you all kind of remember there's just a lot of bond scarcity over the past 5 years. So, while the look back is helpful, I think the look forward is really about creating a system that can sort of flex with what's needed, depending on how much subsidy is available and how much bonds. So we're really trying to create a system that can recognize the ebbs and flows of those sources, and adjust accordingly. So as part of that, HDFC, if it doesn't use the full 50%, it could revert and put those bonds back into the TCAC SIDLAC pot within the same year, so that it can be issued for non-HDFC projects within the same year. And then next slide. And part of this is not just like the big structural stuff, but also, how we strategize and implement all of this work. And that includes addressing all the pain points and kind of procedural challenges that we have in the system. We've had a lot of really great feedback through some work groups that Enterprise and Terner helped us facilitate, as a continuation of some of that engagement that they did before. We also have a really robust set of input from our 519 work group, which is really helping us think through just structurally, how to do this. So just recognizing that we've been having a lot of conversations and we're really trying to listen and translate that into action. So I won't go into each of these things, but these slides can be shared and happy to answer questions. And then next slide. And then just recognizing AB 519 sort of predates the reorg, and created a lot of the foundation for the proposal and the budget that we have now. So we have a work group that convened local government, tribal governments, affordable housing developers, service providers, everyone that can really help us think about how to implement a single application, this one-stop shop. So that thinking really drove and helped inform what our proposal is today. And next slide. Next slide. Great. And then just looking ahead, there's a lot to do. We're in process of drafting updated guidelines to really reflect this approach, unified scoring, universal thresholds, really reflecting any funding specific requirements in a legible way, digging deep into, what we require and why, and making that make more sense, developing the workbook and portal that will reflect that. And then all this sort of interagency work going into how we can be more coordinated, take away some of that overlapping work and be more streamlined in our procedures. So there's a lot to come. You'll see through HDFC at least 2 rounds of public comment for these new guidelines, expecting the first round to happen this summer. Probably by fall, early fall, the second round of public comment. So really looking towards having a final set of new guidelines by the end of the year. And then HDFC would issue its first NOFA in the spring of 2027. So there will be a lot more ways to engage. HDFC Executive Committee, which is the public facing body, they're going to start their public meetings this month. So on May 26th, we are scheduling our first executive committee meeting. So more to come there, and we'll make sure EPHO kind of issues that information. Really looking forward to seeing you all there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to our panelists. And we're now going to move into the question and answer portion of today's presentation. As also previously announced, we're expecting Secretary Moss to join us at around 11:50. So I'm going to keep an eye on the room here to see when she's able to join us and give us her remarks. So I'm going to start with the comments in the chat. I'd also like to just remind folks of some of EPO's community agreements. The space is what we make it, and individual needs are community needs. We seek an equitable balance of perspectives, and we value curiosity over criticism. So while constructive criticism is welcome, I ask that you refrain from like inflammatory remarks. Okay, so I'm going to start with Jennifer Mora. Thank you, Jennifer, for your question. Will PLHA still be administered through HCD? That's a lot of acronyms. I know, I will admit, I don't think I know what PLHA stands for, so I'm hoping, Christina, you do and can answer that question.
I think it stands for Permanent Local Housing Allocation. It's a really good question. The way that we're thinking about it is HCD officially still administers PLHA, but there is this kind of developer facing competitive PLHA component, and that would be coordinated with HDFC. And so it could fall under that, under our budget proposal, it would kind of be coordinated with the other sources, including bonds and credits as applicable. So we're kind of thinking through that, but the idea is that even though the program lives with HCD, recognizing there's a developer facing component that should kind of fit into the HDFC system.
Thanks for that. And as I said, I appreciate the learning opportunity of learning about PLHA just when I think I know the entirety of the acronym soup. I'm surprised. And also, we have almost 100 folks on the call, and we've got people with various level of experience and expertise and years in this field. So we do ask that, if when possible, that people use the full words for things instead of acronyms, just so everyone can follow along. And again, I just give you an example. I've been doing this work for a long time, and that was a new acronym for me. So, okay, this question is from Sarah McIntyre. Curious to know if the stuck projects that already have HCD, that's Housing and Community Development Awards, will have ministerial TCAC and CIDLAC, so again, that's tax credit awards from the HDFC, the Housing Development Finance Committee. So packed full of acronyms in there, and hopefully, Christina, it looks like you're off mute and might have an answer to this as well.
Yeah. Hey, Sarah. Great question. Part of the okay, first, if any of those projects are ready to get their bonds and credits, we are encouraging those projects, if they want to go for a 2026 round, to just go to the treasurer's office and get those bonds and credits as soon as they're ready. If it flows into 2027, the thinking is, yes, it would fall under the HDFC allocation. And we are sort of expecting a big pipeline to flow through that first year of just getting your allocation through HDFC. And we're looking at ways to make that really streamlined. So you're just kind of re-upping and letting us know you need tax credits and bonds through HDFC starting in 2027.
Super. I love all these questions. This is why I love this community so much. Okay, a few more questions. Will ASIC, or the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Community Funds, still be prioritized for transit-adjacent development projects?
Yeah, they're definitely. I think the nature of the ASIC program, the overall framework, is not changing. So I didn't really talk a lot about this, but I probably should have. And Geeta, feel free to jump in too. We're not really gutting the program, right? It's really keeping the framework of ASIC in place and recognizing the need for administrative streamlining so the implementation kind of functions better, so that we have a housing component. 70% of ASIC funding, available ASIC funding, would flow through HDFC to fit within the one-stop shop. And that's to recognize that there shouldn't be extra stops along the way. for HDFC projects to also have to get ASIC. So it's really folding it into the one-stop shop. And then 30% remains with the Strategic Growth Council to administer for sustainable communities, different transit improvements and other things. So there will be a lot of planning and design work, and that will be through the guidelines, kind of engagement and work that we're going to do starting this summer. But part of that will be how do we maintain those GHG reduction priorities, VMT reducing priorities within our housing program, and also recognize different ways that affordable housing is part of our state's climate strategy. So, the materials they're using, the methods, as well as, of course, the location that you mentioned for being, accessible to transit and other things. So there's a lot to kind of cook through that, but the overall goals of the program do not change.
Great. A couple more questions here. How many NOFA rounds, that's notice of funding availability, how many NOFA rounds should we expect from the HDFC or Housing Development Finance Committee in 2027 and 2028?
Good question. Some of this is like, how much money will we have? TBD. So I think if there is a housing bond, that would probably kind of adjust how we might stagger this. But we are kind of thinking about HDFC, aiming to have 2 rounds a year with HDFC because we've heard feedback that it would be good to kind of spread it out across the year so you don't have a bunch of transactions kind of lumped together competing for tax credit pricing and different loan products at the same time. So we are trying to be thoughtful about sort of staggering it. I do think 2027 is going to be a kind of flush it out kind of year, right? Where the first round will be just the catch up of the pipeline. Like those projects Sarah mentioned that just need their tax credits and bonds. Like there might be just a lot of that in the first round. And then we'll see if we have subsidy for the second round. We are trying to have a very regular cadence established through a NOFA calendar that is coordinated with the treasurer's office. So thinking about, when our meetings are versus our ward calendar is versus CIDLAC and TCAC meetings so that it makes sense for the sequencing of projects.
Thank you. And here's a more political question. So this agency is set to go live towards the end of Governor Newsom's terms, right? It's going live in July, and we know he terms out at the end of the year. Do any of the panelists have comments or concerns about the agency operating or, kind of getting its beginning stages under a new gubernatorial administration?
I can start, but I would actually love to hear from my fellow panelists on this too. I'm working furiously, and our team is working furiously to create a legible system that is going to be durable to the transition. We're putting everything into place that reflects all of this good research and thinking. And my perspective is it's kind of hard to get a governor to care about this kind of stuff until probably late in their term. And it behooves us to really put this structure into place and start seasoning it so that the next governor, it's like a no-brainer. Let it keep cooking, like makes sense. It's just good government, and not really get in the way of that. So that is my goal. I think it's been an evolution of thinking that we want to make durable.
I'll just jump in. One of the findings I think I shared from the research is that having a more consolidated system works really well when you have strong leadership. But the flip side of that is that if you end up with somebody in the role of CHHA secretary who maybe isn't as favorable towards affordable housing or some of the values that we might all care about, then that does create problems. And that sort of appointment does flow down from the governor. So to the you all are tracking the gubernatorial election, I would encourage you to learn about candidates' positions on housing and specifically affordable housing. We at Turner are actually co-hosting a gubernatorial debate on Friday, which will be live streamed. As in California also did one at their conference that I believe is on their website that you can check out. So I would encourage everybody to become educated about the positions that the candidates have on affordable housing.
I just wanted to add to Christina and Sarah's comments, because, Sarah and I have been able to have a glimpse into the work of the state, since we're providing technical assistance. And I think one of the things that what Sarah and I have talked about is how heartwarming it has been to see staff across these different agencies really work together to figure out systems. I've had a particular window into the legal piece, and the leadership definitely sets the culture, right? It sets the culture, it sets the direction of what's going to happen. But what I've witnessed is it's permeated several layers that's somewhat insulated from the administration. So things are happening very much in a new way. And there are stakeholders and users of the system that are already experiencing some of those changes. And so that gives me a lot of hope that even with an administrative change, that some of these pieces are already working and will continue to work because staff is so motivated. That's the other piece. But staff doesn't like doing a lot of this stuff either. There is like compliance, sending the same form, dinging developers for negative points. Well, all of us want to get out of those regulatory pieces and administrative pieces that really burden the system. And there's a willingness across the board now to do that.
Okay, wonderful.
Sorry, Sarah's
Please, go
comment
ahead.
also reminded me the treasurer's race is also really relevant here. In the end, even though we are creating, we're trying to create a structure where things make sense under HDFC, but there's still a treasurer's office sort of non-HDFC door. Both are really important for the whole affordable housing system. And in this time of more bond abundance, like it is important to have both of those doors working. And so I do think who the next treasurer is will really impact that as the counterpart in this system. So encourage you all to look at those candidates.
Great, thank you so much. And I apologize that the secretary was delayed. It was my fault. I hadn't gotten the link to the webinar to her, but I did just see that someone joined, but I think that person had my name as their name. So I'm wondering if that is
There she is.
There she is. I'm sorry. Not Lindsay Haddix. Sorry. I'm sorry about that, Secretary Moss. But I appreciate you joining us today, and you're right on time um, to give some closing remarks. We have about
Okay,
90
Lindsay,
folks on
now
the
I'm
Zoom.
having trouble hearing you. So hold on one second.
Okay.
I don't know what's happening. The sound went away.
Oh, geez. Can you hear me now?
Hold on. Let me see what I can do here.
Okay. We can hear you. Let's put that in the chat. Christina, could you maybe text the secretary or email her, let her know that we
Can you all
can't
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm so sorry to be a little late. I'm looking at all of the folks on this call, and I'm wondering why I'm here at all. In part because you have such great people who have told you, I think, a lot about the work we're doing to reorganize our agency and stand up our first housing and homelessness agency for the state. we could not have done this work without many of the folks on the screen. I'm seeing Sarah, Geeta, Lindsay, Elaine, many of you who have really been so supportive around the idea to make sure that we have the kind of focused, integrated leadership that we need in order to facilitate our aspirations around making it faster and cheaper to build housing in California, to preserve housing for our most vulnerable neighbors. And, I'm down here in Southern California at the regional conference for SCAG. And I've had a chance to meet with so many of these elected officials who are talking about all the great work that they're doing in their local communities. And it just reminds me that we can't do this work without the partnership of each and every one of you on this call. At the state level, and I'm new to the state, many of you all know, in my role as secretary, but I've spent most of my career in community, local government, nonprofits, really trying to be thoughtful about how we create vibrant and sustainable communities for everyone who lives in our communities. And it is impossible to do that work without you all. And so it has been an incredible privilege to work with so many folks at the state level who are inspired by our vision to streamline our housing finance system, to create this new agency and department within it that will hopefully not just be aspirational, but be the vehicle by which we can actually deliver homes faster and cheaper to the people who need them. And so I'm mostly showing up with deep gratitude in your partnership and your commitment. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And even though this administration is preparing for a transition, what this agency does is cements our commitment in state infrastructure, that in perpetuity, we will have a cabinet level entity responsible for the coordination, policy design, creative thinking, bold ideas to address our housing and homelessness crisis. And I feel like I owe so much of that to you all in your partnership and support of this, Herculean effort that we've been doing over the last 2 years together. So deep gratitude. I see many of my homies on this call. It's so funny because, I was trying to give SCAG their flowers, but, I had to talk about the Bay Area because, that's where we come from. So I'm over here in the corner so they don't hear me, but you all need to hear me and hear my gratitude for you all. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I couldn't join you sooner, but I'm sure it's been a rich and amazing conversation. And just lastly, before I turn it over, Lindsay, I just have to say, you have been such an extraordinary partner, not just in your role at EPHO, but over these many years that you and I have had the chance to work together. Deepening our work in community has been a true pleasure to do it with you. So thank you for your leadership and all that you do to support everybody on this call. All right, team. Thanks.
Thank
Appreciate
you, Secretary. Appreciate you so much. Thank you for joining
you.
us.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh,
What
wow.
a note to end on,
Oh
Lindsay.
my goodness.
So
Am I
great.
blushing? Well, thanks for hanging out with us. I know we went just a little bit over time, but like I said, we've recorded this webinar, so those flattering remarks that the secretary gave me will be recorded and sent to everyone to hear. Repeat. Oh my goodness. I'm gushing. So I just want to thank Christina and Geeta and Sarah for joining us today. I want to thank EPHO's Senior Comms Manager, Kate Young, for not only advancing slides, but making slides and making all this happen. I want to thank my colleagues, Elaine Johnson at Housing Santa Cruz County and Regina at SV at Home, and all the other colleagues I see from HLC and Generation Housing and CHHA and Marin Home for co-hosting. What a great first ending for kind of the first week of Affordable Housing Month. Please go to affordablehousingmonth.org, affordablehousingmonth.org, and you will see all of the, right there at the bottom, and you will see all of the events that all of our amazing organizations are putting on for the rest of the month. I thank you again for your great questions, for your energy, for your attendance, for your time, for your colleagues who weren't able to attend. Be on the lookout for the webinar being posted on our website. And I just wish everybody an amazing afternoon and an incredible rest of Affordable Housing Month. Thank you so much. Take good care, everyone.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Abho. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.